listen, I don't know how to do it. Anyway, about to get this started, so gonna be ignoring y'all. Oh, Doritos. Sweet, I have some Doritos. Maybe I'll go get some right now. All right, guys, here's the hitter upgrades for the roster update coming out on June 17th. A little light this week. Not going to force it. Don't have a lot to really see here. I mean, they have set a precedent recently where they will upgrade guys 2 weeks in a row or 2 out of 3 weeks. Michael Fulmer on the pitching side got back-to-back upgrades. So we could see some further upgrades of guys that have been recently upgraded. All those Boston Red Sox, for example, that wouldn't surprise me. But in terms of new guys here, I really tried to look at some, and actually I even have some guys who have been upgraded this year, but have been dominating so much since the upgrade that I feel like they still deserved an upgrade. So let's start out in Minnesota with a really far off the radar guy who you might be surprised to see get an upgrade, but I think he deserves it. And so I think we're going to give, or I don't think it's happening. Oh, it's happening. I think Robbie Grossman is our first upgrade candidate. Let me turn this down. So he's sitting as a common, so it's not going to be too hard to impact him. And, these upgrades, it's a small sample. There's definitely some skepticism that deserves to go with these numbers. But, my podcast partner on Fangraphs talked to me about some skills changes and some approach changes that Grossman has made, shifting to a more aggressive approach that is allowing him to untap some power. So I think we're going to see some believability to it. Now, that doesn't mean that San Diego Studios is ready to move, but either way, if you feel like, here's the thing, I don't know what kind of investment opportunity this is of a guy who's going to go from common to bronze and probably need a whole nother month of high quality work before approaching silver. But this could just end up being a guy who improves his stock for BR. Let's start with the contact versus righties. I got it up to 60. This has not been what's fueling his breakout here. He's got a 261 average, career 238. Lower strikeout percentage, but not by so much that it's again a drastic approach. He's still solid, but not great against righties with his contact. Contact versus lefties up 5 points to 68. He's savaging lefties right now. 419, 471, 742 triple slash line, but it's 34 plate appearances, and that's just really small. But where it's really going to show an effect is against lefties, power versus lefties. I got it all the way up to 53, which is not even eye-popping, but when you're coming from 38, that's pretty substantial. He's got 5 homers against lefties already this year. He had 11 in 764 plate appearances against lefties coming into this year. So that is such a stark difference that if you were just judging off of these 5 homers, you might move it all the way up to like a 70. But we have no idea if it's real yet. So I think a solid but measured gain from 38 to 53 is viable. And that's it. Just some small upgrades here just to see what he's got going. He moves from 67 to probably not something earth-shattering, let's just be honest, to a 71. But it kind of starts the trek and gives him a better foundation to build on and see if he's something real. He's also got a little bit of decent speed, good discipline. If the fielding was better, he'd probably be a better BR candidate. So it's still kind of a tepid card, but he's been one of the hottest players in the game for the last 2 weeks, so that's why I felt he needed to get some love. Much more substantial upgrade here coming out of the NL Central. Jay Bruce, a popular trade candidate that we're going to hear a lot about in the coming months, and hopefully the threat is a bad word, but just the looming potential trade doesn't necessarily mess with him. It can mess with some guys. Other guys completely immune to it, doesn't matter. It's a case-by-case situation. Could hurt him. I don't know that it will. He's a professional here. He's been in the majors for years. I don't think something like this is definitely is necessarily going to mess with him. Let's start with the contact versus righties. Only up to 63. Not driving his breakout here. He's at 261 average with a 21% strikeout rate. For his career, he's at 257 and 23. Negligible differences, so just a little bit of a gain there. Contact versus lefties a little bit more substantial. I get a 10-point gain up to 60. He's got a 296 average with an 18% strikeout rate. Compare that to 230 and 27 for his career. He was always one of those guys that was subject to platoon potential because lefties just had his number. And he's been much, much better this year. And since there is the strikeout skills change to go with it, I think there is some believability. So I think a nice, healthy upgrade of 10 points is merited here. Power is really where you're going to feel the gains for sure. 5-point gain up to 86. Now, it's only 5 points, but when you're moving in the 80s at all, it's a lot more substantial than if you were to go from, say, 65 to 70. He's got a career best 583 slugging percentage and 11 home runs already in 180 plate appearances against righties. If he kept his pace that he currently has for 450 plate appearances, which is how many he's averaged against righties over the last 3 years, he'd hit 28 homers against them. He's probably not going to keep that pace, but there's a good chance that he beats his previous high of 22 homers versus righties in the season. Versus lefties, just a small uptick to 67. He's got a 241 ISO with 3 home runs already. He's got a career 196 ISO. So even as they've beaten him on the contact and he's had big strikeout rates, he has maintained some power against lefties, and that's just because he's a powerful dude. He's got the 10th best lefty versus lefty ISO, which is slugging minus average. And what it basically does is give you an idea of their extra base power. And so, again, 10th lefty versus lefty since the start of 14. That's really substantial. And honestly, you could make a case for that to be even higher than 67, but we'll go with a small gain right here. Plate vision, I think, needs to go up big time here. It was probably underrated coming into the season, so I think a 10-point gain to 56 is merited. Last 3 years, from 27% to 22% to 20% this year. A 20% strikeout rate for a slugger is definitely workable and above average. So, I think he needs to be above that 50 threshold. We got him at 56 right now. So those are the upgrades for Jay Bruce. Goes from an 81 to an 84. So not quite gold, but approaching it. And I think there's some wiggle room here for them to get him to gold if that is their desire. I don't think it would be necessarily fudging it just for the sake of moving him a threshold. I think I went a little bit light on the power because I'm acknowledging the history. If they see some viable skills changes, and they're there to be seen, but if they see them as ready to act on in a short sample, then they could kick that up to 75 or so. And then we would really change the scope. I don't even know if it'd have to go that high. Let's just do a little test out. Let's just move it to 70. Is that enough? And that's enough for the extra point. So I could really see him going to gold. What if it's at 69? Still 85. So honestly, moving that needle just a very little bit on the power versus lefties, good chance Jay Bruce gets gold. If this is even his week to be upgraded. Next up, everybody's favorite. Well, maybe not everybody's, but one of my favorites. I think they should be liberal and a little bit aggressive with an Ichiro upgrade, because you know what? It's his last year. Why the freak not? Comes in as a 77, right? Yep, 77. He's actually having a pretty darn good season for being like 72 or whatever, however old he is. First things first, the realist. I think a massive gain versus righties with contact is in order here. You're talking about a guy who's got a 343 average and a 3% strikeout rate. That's obscene. He's always been a low strikeout guy, but usually in like the 9 to 10% range. He's at 3%. So I think that they could get it all the way up to 75. That's a 20-point boost. Again, I'm suggesting that they be a little bit more liberal with somebody like Ichiro because of his icon status and it's his last year. I'm actually okay with them maybe fudging it a little bit more than they might normally, instead of being rigorous to the numbers and saying, no, this usually means a 6-point gain or whatever. bump it a little bit more with Ichiro. Power versus righties actually gets an upgrade too. Not much, just to 35. It's just in recognition of the fact that he has 5 doubles already this year, and he had 5 all of last year against righties. Again, nothing crazy. Plate vision has to go up big time to 85. You're talking about a guy with a 5% strikeout rate. It was 12% last year. He's in that, again, that 9 to 11% range for his career number. 5%. That's obscene. So 85, honestly, they could bump that even higher. If it was at 90, I don't think it would be it would be inappropriate. Plate discipline, let's move that up a little bit as well, up 10 points to 55. Hey guys, he's got a 10% walk rate this year. That's a career best. 10%, usually if somebody was maintaining a 10% walk rate, they'd probably have closer to a 60, low 60s plate discipline. We'll give him 55. But I think that this is viable for Ichiro. All right, so those are the upgrades. Those are pretty substantial. They got him from a 77 to an 82. Going to be tough to take someone from 77 to gold, but he does go to silver, and firmly so, as an 82. And if he keeps it up, then maybe we can start talking about moving back up to gold at some point. I don't know the last time that he was. I haven't played the game long enough probably to have a gold Ichiro. What if they got crazy and moved this to like 80? What would that do? That'd be 83. So to really get him there, I wonder what it would take. Does the vision moving up to like 92 do anything? It starts to get him there. There might be a path, but it's arduous. I'm not sure that we're going to see him get to gold at any point this year unless he continues to just absolutely rake, hit 340 something against righties and force their hand, because that's really where they can get the biggest gains if he dominates all year and just keep pumping up this contact versus righties and the plate vision. What if those were just all 3 straight 90s? And that would do it. That would not happen this week. I could never envision that. That would be more of a slow burn over the next month. Whoops. Why am I exiting out like a dipshit? I feel like sometimes it resets your roster, so I'm just going to go back in and do it. All right, next up, we got 2 more here. Now, this one's one of the guys who's been upgraded recently, but absolutely deserves another upgrade, and that is Michael Saunders. Michael Saunders comes in as a 77 as well. Now, he was upgraded on May 2nd. And since that upgrade, more than a month plus, he has been beasting. He has a 316 average, 391 on base, and 571 slugging. That's insane. I mean, that's just all-star caliber. Those are all better than his average on base and slugging on May 2nd. So he's been even better than he was when he got the upgrade. Absolutely needs to keep going. I think there are some specific upgrades that he needs here, really coming down to his power at this point. I think the power versus righties has to go up to 70. That's a nice 10-point gain. Power versus lefties needs to make the biggest jump. I'll mention that he has a 203 ISO against righties. ISO again is slugging percentage minus batting average, and it takes out singles and gives you an idea of their power, one measure sort of number. He's top 20 in weighted runs created plus for lefties against righties. Now, basically what weighted runs created plus is, it's a one number sort of deal that takes all of their offensive performance, puts it in a number, and adjusts it for both park and league scoring context, and puts it on a scale where 100 is average and every tick above is a percentage that you're better. If you have a 114, you're 14% better than average. If you have a 91, you're 9% worse than average. I know that's a lot to take in, but basically anything over 100 is better than average. Once you start getting into like 150s and whatnot, you're really exemplary. I didn't write down his WRC plus versus righties, but he's top 20 for lefties versus righties. That's substantial because lefties generally crush righties. Like that leaderboard is huge. That's David Ortiz. That's Chris Davis. That's the beast lefties of the league, and he's up there in 20th so far this year. Power versus lefties, massive gain. Massive gain. 20 points, I think, is deserved here. because he's shown skills in the past like this. It's just been a matter of health has consistently dodged him. This year he's healthy and he's raking. Now I did put down his WRC plus. Remember how I said like 150 is where you start to get to be like really damn good? He's got a 187 and he's a lefty. So he's left versus left, popping a 187 WRC plus against them and a 375 ISO. Those are the best in the league for lefty versus lefty. Now he does have a career 91 and 157 ISO, 91 WRC plus, 157 ISO. So that tempers me a little bit, but I still think that they can give him a substantial upgrade because we're now 2+ months into an excellent season for Michael Saunders. All right, just those power upgrades alone are really going to push him, I think. Up to an 82. So a nice 5-point gain, and it's similar to Ichiro. Can't quite get him to gold. That's an 8-point gain. That's really tough to do, especially when I only updated 2 metrics. But now look at this. This is a much more usable card. It's got some sneaky speed, really good arm strength that you can use. Defense is not great, but everything else there, you know, platoon neutral right now because he's killing lefties so much. That's a good card right there. That's definitely a BR silver that you could see popping up in bronze rounds too for a little while. All right, and last but certainly not least, because he's a total freaking beast. Didn't even mean to make that rhyme. That was pretty dope. This is the guy I was telling you guys that I updated him, and he hasn't been updated since I suggested it. So here's the thing. Rewind. Ian Kinsler was upgraded on May 20th. I think I actually missed that because I think I put him in the May 27th upgrades, which was kind of doofy because he's not going to be upgraded 2 weeks in a row normally. But either way, he was upgraded on May 20th, and since then, he's got a 321 average, 390 on base percentage, and 543 slugging with 4 homers and 4 stolen bases. He's been a monster. Very similar to Saunders, where since his upgrade, he's only proved that he deserves even more of an upgrade. So first off, power versus, a lot of this is power based. In fact, it's only power based. This is a lot like Saunders' upgrade because it's just power based. Because the contact numbers are both still really, they're really good already, and there's just not room for movement. But this, I see a big gain of 12 points up to 64. He's 14th in WRC plus, 17th in ISO. Among righties versus righties, so same side platoon there. He's and that's among 93 players with a minimum of 150 plate appearances, which gives you a pretty decent sample of players. He's 14th and 17th, so he's raking. 64 might even be light for these numbers, but the last couple of years, Kinsler's power hasn't quite been what it was in his 20s when he was popping 30 bombs. That diamond card that we have, I mean, I don't have it yet, but that is available to us. He's not quite getting to those levels just yet, but 64 right now I think is definitely worthwhile. Could even see him going higher if they wanted to get really aggressive, but 64 will go with that right now. But then against lefties, he's due a big upgrade, I think. You got to get it up to 73. That's just my opinion right there. 209 ISO so far this year. Again, I've told you before, 200 is a threshold where you really start taking it seriously, regardless of the position. And he's at 209 for a second baseman. Now, he was at 145 in 2014 through 2015. So this is a big jump, but it's 2 months versus 2 years. And so, you know, even 57 to 73 might be too much, but I think that they can really get him up here pushing 70 for sure. He's got 3 homers against lefties already. He hasn't topped 4 since 2012 in a season against lefties. He's 3rd in WRC plus and 10th in ISO for the right versus lefty matchup, a minimum of 70 plate appearances. He's been one of the absolute best hitters against lefties this year. So I think an 86-73 against lefties is more than fair. Again, I could see wiggle room for them to go higher and actually be justified, but I think this is a nice balance of not going too crazy on him while also recognizing what a beast he's been. So just power upgrades for him. He goes from an 87 up to a 92. Almost diamond, y'all. Almost diamond. And go look at the numbers. Like, might feel weird to say a 33-year-old Ian Kinsler's approaching diamond, but if you also go back to about July of last year when he really got going, when he hit his first homer, it kind of unlocked something. He got off to a slow start with the power for sure. It was really bad. But if you go from that point on and you just kind of look at almost the last calendar year, he's been really good. So if you just kind of push those first 2 months of last year off to the side a little bit and say, okay, he wasn't himself, he was not hitting very well, but it was too big of a drop for what his skills are, and just look at the last year kind of in isolation, you see that Kinsler has definitely played up to an elite level, and I think he's deserving of a near diamond. I really do. So that's it. Just 5 this week, but we got Robbie Grossman going from 67 to 71, Jay Bruce from 81 to 84, Ichiro from 77 to 82, Michael Saunders also from 77 to 82, Ian Kinsler from 87 to 92. In addition, there are guys in the previous videos you can see on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, obviously go look at the videos, the past videos. All those guys who haven't gotten their upgrade yet, I fully still back them for an upgrade. Guys like Victor Martinez, Odubel Herrera, Jung Ho Gong, Charlie Blackman. I think there's a couple others. But just a handful of guys that I've already given upgrades to that they haven't gotten them yet. No reason for me to change. I've went and looked at their numbers over the last couple of weeks, and they've either held steady, or even if they're a little bit off their pace, their numbers still don't account for what they were doing early May last year, or early May last month when I was making those upgrades. So go through the old videos. You can take a look and see those guys. Of course, pitchers will be tomorrow on Wednesdays going forward, as always. And of course, you can find all the videos on YouTube, youtube.com/.